Hi, good evening. Give people a couple of minutes to get joined in on here. See what's going on in the world.
All grew up.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so 7 o'clock, time to get it done. All right. For the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about what to expect from the gods, what to expect from a connection of the gods, what it would look like. Those kind of things that let us know who we are and where we are. Last week we went over figuring out where we are. One of the biggest problems with determining where we are is honesty. Most people are reluctant to believe that you're really just one paycheck away from being completely wiped out, ruined, homeless, on the street like all the other people in LA. Very few people are willing to believe that living paycheck to paycheck, there's a hope. See, this is the whole purpose of everything I'm doing here is to get us away from that of just living on hope and living for the weekend. Good evening, man. What's going on? To live in a life that we're just one paycheck away from not making our bills and being evicted or whatever, it's a hard place to be for a lot of people. But that's really the reality of it. And yet very few of us understand how to step out of that and become something more. Very few, we just work harder, we'll get a raise. We work harder, we'll get a promotion. But you got to remember, all of our eggs are in one basket. If there's anything that we should be learning from the actions of the governments and the businesses of the world is, especially with like vaccines and nonsense like this, is that there are a lot of people who are making decisions concerning your life that are not made with your best interest at heart. So we got to learn how to take care of ourselves, right? So we got to start being very honest with ourselves about who we are and where we are. Where am I? Well, I'm in a tough spot, ain't I? One paycheck away from ruin. I've decided to shirk everything I understand about spirituality and try something new. And I just work a regular job, and I live for the weekend, have some fun. I don't think that really sits well with anybody. Right. So that's exactly it. Multiple streams of income is great. Having three or four, okay, that's good. But first thing is we got to identify who we are and what we're capable of. The thing about doing all of these things is it requires an enormous amount of discipline. And typically what leads people to this crossroads when we show up here, all of us grow up and go through trauma, difficulty, some kind of pain, disappointment, letdown, failures, all of these things. And each one of these things kind of forms a shell about us. That's our armor. That's the helm of awe that they're talking about that Fafnir wore. Keep everybody away from his treasure so he could look like a huge dragon and intimidate everybody. And then we got to realize is that when Sigurd is wearing that and he approaches Sigurdrifa as she's laying there in the ring of fire, he doesn't recognize her as a woman. He recognizes her as an opponent. It's not until he takes that off does he see the woman. Here's the thing. She's halfway to death. She is halfway to death, encased in that armor that protects her from whatever that was going on in the world. She's been pricked with the sleep thorn. He's wearing some armor that protects him from the world wearing a helm of awe. And people do the same thing whether we understand it or not. So sometime in our 30s and 40s, we start figuring out, hey, this shit ain't working. I'm not feeling right about things. I don't know where to go. I'm not real sure who I am. Asking somebody else out there to do it for me is not working either. And we end up here. Other rooms like this, all over the world. And you might think it's an anecdotal analogy on my part until you begin to recognize that there are millions of people doing this all over the world, returning to ancestral ways. So when we develop that honesty with ourselves, how do we do that? So I'm asking everybody to say, take an honest look at who they are and where they are in life and see if they want to move forward and how they want to move forward, right? Okay, so I've got everybody questioning who they are. I've got everybody questioning where they are in life, right? Anybody that's paying attention to this, how do we sort that out? Okay, we have some things we recognize in the lore, but there's several other things we recognize in the lore too. Right? King Gylfi and Lear at the beginning of the Gylfaginning and the Skarsgård, both of them at a crossroads in life decided to seek out the gods, and both of them tried to hide themselves to do it. They didn't go with as their authentic self. And that's one of the most important things we need to remember about everything that we do is we've got to maintain an integrity with ourselves and be honest with ourselves. That is the most difficult thing to do for some reason. Primarily because we have all of these disappointments, pains, traumas, difficulties, letdowns that have shaped our defense systems. Those defense systems begin to cripple us. We build the wall, so to speak. I'm going to build a big wall around my heart. The whole movie, Pink Floyd, The Wall, is exactly what it's about, right? But it's not. It's a timeless story. It's the same thing. It isn't until they cut free the burning and removes the helm of all that they begin to recognize and share this ancestral wisdom. It isn't until Lear and King Gylfi, or the Gylfaginning and the Skarsgård, get to sit down and talk with Bragi. They start asking these questions, and then this truth is being revealed. I think they're being slick, but the gods are giving them just as much as they need to know for where they are in life. Both of them are skilled in magic, right? Magic is that ability to take the shortcut in life that doesn't result in a stronger person, right? I'll take a shortcut. I don't know how to deal with this pain. I'll take a shortcut. I want to get revenge on somebody. I'm not strong enough to go do it myself. I'll use magic and take a shortcut, right? These kind of things. Getting something without putting in the effort necessary to earn it by your own hard work, back, and strength, right? How do we develop that honesty with ourselves? So several years ago, I wrote a book called Eager's Feast, and it continually comes up in conversations that I have with people, right? So tonight we're going to go over the Lokisana, right? Because this is where we begin to discover exactly what these various gods and gods mean. So every now and again, I'll see some people talking about Loki as if they understand what he is. Edgy and cool. I kind of understand the elements of chaos in this. We're human beings. We're not gods. We don't have the luxury of playing with that kind of fire, right? So, not to mention that it's he was bound by the gods. I mean, who the hell are we to think we understand what's going on? But the clearest aspect of what this is here. When we break this down as the gods and goddesses represents thoughts, actions, feelings, emotions of who we are, we begin to see this antagonistic idea unfold in the Lokisana, right? So it's one of them, and interestingly enough, it's the best preserved of the collection. That says something for it right there, right? So they kind of tame it down to a contest of insults. But should we reduce this story that meant something and so much to people for 10,000 years to just, well, it's just a contest of insults? Or should we consider that maybe this means something more? Maybe there's a reason why that's there. These tales don't exist or continue to exist throughout time because they're funny. I got a lot of funny stories, right? Doesn't mean they're going to last the test of time. So if you're sitting around a fire and you have a whole room full of the next generation of children and you're an elder of the community, how do you tell them? There you go. How do you tell them how to develop into the kind of individuals that know how to make the right thought, make the right decision when nobody else is around? This is the perfect way to do that. All right. So Eager has the feast. Odin and Frigg come. Thor came not, as he was on a journey to the east. Again and again, he's on a journey to the east, and the only thing I can think of, being the warder of men, is that he is preparing the way for Suna to rise. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. Slaying trolls in the east, the ones that would prefer that it be dark. But Sif was there, Bragi, Idun, Tyr, who had but one hand, was there, right? Njorth and Skadi, Frey and Freyr, Vithar, the son of Odin, Loki was there, Freyr's servants, Bivigir and Bela, and many were there of the gods and elves. So here's the deal. Ygr had two serving men, Fimifang and Eldir, right? Glittering gold they placed in the firelight. The ale came in of itself, and great was the peace. So they're having a good time. Everything is laid out in a scene exactly like you would expect it to be of the divine. Things are happening of their own accord, right? The ale's coming in. There's glittering fire. It's peaceful, right? And the guest praised much the ability of Ygr serving men. So somebody wasn't getting their fair share of attention, and Loki might not endure that and slew Fimifang. Okay, so let's take a look at that right there. Y'all know what that is? That's your ego. Loki is the full-on representation of the uninspired human intellect and ego. Period. If your ego's not being stroked, if I walk into a room and people don't recognize, hey, that's Bryan Wilton, right? Should my ego spin, hey, motherfuckers, y'all don't recognize me? Right? That's my ego. I don't have to worry about that. Right? If I walk into a room and nobody says a word, I'm good with it. I'm just soon flying on the radar and make quiet introductions. But not this. This is what our ego looks like. Right? This is what it begins to do. This is what it begins to look like. It's the one part of yourself that will lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, do whatever it can to convince you that it doesn't exist and still get you to do everything to feed it. Right? Simple greatness by the thought of being great. I'll be great. I don't really have to do anything. I can be great because, well, I know this, and I'll float above the rest on brain power alone. And if anybody gets in my way, I'll destroy them. Right? We have social media that allows that to happen. Well, I was great because I destroyed this and that. Believe me, I'm well aware how it all works. Then the gods shook their shields and howled at Loki and drove him away into the forest, and thereafter set to drinking. Loki turned back, and outside he met Eder. Loki spoke to him. Speak now, Elder, for not one step further shalt thou fare. What ale talk here do they have within the sons of the glorious gods? Now he's threatening this guy. Now he's going to cut this guy's throat if he didn't tell him what's going on. Of their weapons and their might in war, the sons of the glorious gods, from gods and elves who are gathered here, no friend in words shalt thou find. So let's start off with how this thought process works. When you're laying in bed at night and that one random thought happens to show up in your head of some time where you acted like an idiot a long time ago, or did something cruel, or did something unnecessarily mean, or failed to live up to who you're supposed to be, or did something that brings shame to yourself, some act of cowardice, some act of shamefulness, some act of cruelty. And you remember that, or some pain, how you could have acted better. It's how we could have done better. And you push it out, and then it comes back. And there it is right there. That act of shame, cruelty, or whatever it happens to be that resonates in your thought before you go to sleep at night. How do we get rid of that? Well, number one, you live a life of honesty and you don't do the shit anymore. Right? You have to build that stuff up and continue to make deposits in the credibility of who you are and the actions you have and your ability to continue on to try to be better. Yep, I did that. Okay. I didn't do it again. I haven't done that since. I've continued to grow. I've continued to be better, made amends wherever possible. There's something to be said for that, too. But Loki's that thought that's coming back. That one ugly thought. Everybody's in here talking. I've done this. I accomplished this, and I accomplished this. And I got this done today. So today was pretty successful. The kids are fed. They're washed. We've had dinner. The chores are done. The house is clean. I worked a full day. I got this done. All right, this has been a good, yeah, I remember 10 years ago, I kind of screwed that person over. I need to fix that. That's Loki. That one negative thought. And really, that's all it takes to derail all of the positivity your mind can muster. In shall I go into Eager's hall, for the feast fain I would see. Bale and hatred I bring to the gods, and their mead with venom mix. And that one negative thought does exactly that to every positive idea we have going. The next thing you're thinking, well, did I cook enough dinner? Are the kids hungry? Was I mean to the kids? Was I mean to my wife? Damn, maybe I shouldn't have been so hard on that guy at work. Man, maybe I am kind of a frolic. And it continues to go down with one negative thought. This whole feast is going to degenerate because of this one negative thought. Right? Loki spake, bethink me, elder, if thou and I shall strive with spiteful speech. Richer I grow in ready words if thou speakest too much to me. Richer I grow in words if thou speakest too much to me. Every positive thing that's going forth, this one negative thought is going to chew it up, spit it out, twist it, turn it, call it a half-truth, call it something else. And the next thing you know, every good thing you've done is in question because we're paying attention to that one negative thought came in there and derailed our entire thought process. And for the alcoholic or the drug addict, whether they've had a good day, I probably need to have a drink. Yep, years past, fear. That kind of fear comes in, and the next thing you know, everything we do is in question. Pain from our parents, that shows up, right? It's the ego. And if the ego can't feed itself, it turns into a victim complex. Well, I'm a victim. It's the flip side of the same coin. I'm either boosting my ego, not doing anything, just talking about how great I am, or I'm a victim because nobody cares. Nobody's paying attention to me the way I think they should, and I'm a victim, right? That's what the human ego is capable of. And Loki represents that. So he comes in. Thirsty, I come into this hall, and he is indeed thirsty. I loped from a long journey to ask of the gods that one should give fair mead for a drink to me. Right? Why sit ye silent, swollen with pride, ye gods, and no answer give, all puffed up and self-important? At your feast a place and a seat prepare me, or bid me forth to fare. Well, the denial of hospitality is an ugly thing, so he's abusing rights and privileges of the guest and the host. And we do the same thing to ourselves when we begin to entertain that stuff. We're abusing ourselves. Why? Because we're familiar with it. Somewhere in our past, somewhere along the way, that became normal. People talking to us in a certain way. While we may be reviled or revulsed or just sickened by the idea, some point in our life, somewhere from when we were very little, or maybe it was a partner we had that was abusive, we got that thought became welcomed. That thought became the pattern. That idea of insistence, I have a right to be here. You deserve to be tormented by your own thoughts. Ask anyone that's recovered from a narcissistic relationship, and they'll tell you, right? That's the way it is. And here we have it, thousands of years old. The first one that gets insulted is the singer, the one of peace, the one that tells the stories, the one that calls the history, Bragi, who is who could very well be the son of Odin and Gunnloth. 3 nights he spent with her in the golden mead and the mead of Kvasir, right? A place in the seat will the gods prepare no more in the midst of thee. He says, no, you're not welcome here. But he's not exactly known as the front man of the battle, is he? For the gods know well what men they wish to find in their mighty feasts. He just tells them, look, you're not welcome here because you ain't qualified to be here. And yet somehow along the way, just like men, we have the opportunity to sit at the table. And we have 2 choices. We can justify our seat at the table, or we can sit here and pretend like we're worthy sitting at the table by pointing out the failures of others. Not by doing great deeds ourselves, but by pointing out how everybody else failed. I didn't really ever do anything, but I did point out how that see how that works. So Bragi points it out. No, you're not welcome here. Loki spake, remember, oath in olden days that we both our blood have mixed. Then didst thou promise no elder poor, unless it were brought for us both. Odin spake, stand forth then, Vithar, let the wolf's father find a seat at our feast. So he insults him right there. Lest evil should Loki speak aloud here within Aegir's hall. All right? He's not going to deny him hospitality, even though he's an ass. Bragi spake, a horse and a sword for my hoard will I give, and a ring gives Bragi to boot. That hatred thou makest not among the gods, so rouse not the great ones to wrath. Bragi is offering him peace. A sword and a horse and a ring to boot. These are big things. These are big things in that day. All of them are worth an enormous amount of money. Loki spake, in horses and rings thou shalt never be rich, Bragi, but both shalt thou lack. Of the gods and elves here together met, least brave in battle thou art, and shyest thou art of the shot. Bragi spake, now were I without as I am within, and here in Aegir's hall, thine head would I bear in my hand away, and pay thee the price of thy lies. So Loki and Bragi get into it. Loki's he's the scorpion. He's making the quick stinging comeback. He's making the most insulting thing possible, right? He's taken the most positive aspect of that individual and calling it a weakness in another arena. It's like taking a modern day interpretation and putting it on something that happened in the past and applying the morals of today to the morals of the past as if it might be right, and in an effort to eradicate it. Right? In thy seed art thou bold, not so are thy deeds. Bragi, adorner of benches. Go and fight if anger thou feelest. No hero such forethought has. Okay? Now here's where it becomes interesting. The next person to speak is his wife. All right? So Loki and him have had their deal, and before he replies, his wife speaks up. Be well privy, Bragi, his kinship way, since chosen as wished son he was, and speak not to Loki such words of spite here within Aegir's hall. She's saying, don't argue with this guy. He's a fool. He's here because he has manipulated his way to the table. Right? We've conditioned ourselves to allow such ideas to have a seat at our table. We've allowed our thoughts to progress to the point where we feed off of the energy of those negative thoughts. Our bodies don't know that what our mind is thinking isn't really happening, and it floods us with chemicals and endorphins that we are accustomed to. I then spake to Loki, so be silent, Ithan, thou art, I say, a woman most lustful in love, since thou art washed bright arms diswised about thy brother's slayer. So he calls her a whore and says, you're screwing your brother's slayer. Right? No one knows what that story is. I then spoke to Loki, I speak not with spiteful words, right? And Bragi I call him, who is hot with beer, for I wish not that fierce they should fight. So he's stirring up problems between this husband and wife, creating doubt. Why are you sleeping with that dude? You should have been over here with this dude. He killed your brother. Why, you common hussy, all right? I don't know what a woman's thought process would be like. I know what a man's is. Those kind of things create question in a man's mind. And that kind of doubt corrodes a relationship beyond anything if there's not a communication. But they stood up one for the other. And he continues on. And here's another thing. Now another thought comes into it. Gefyon. Why ye gods twain with bitter tongues raise hate among us here? Loki is famed for his mockery foul, and the dwellers in heaven he hates. All right? She's just like, quit arguing with him. He's a fool. But she shouldn't even open her mouth. Be silent, Gefyon, for now shall I say, who led thee to evil life? The boy so fair gave a necklace bright, and about him thy leg was laid. So now he calls Gefyon a whore. Oh, for a pretty trinket, you threw your legs apart? These kind of things eat at our positive ability to perceive the reality of where we are. So if you see this one negative thought has come in and right off the bat begun to corrode our comprehension of ourselves. Our own ego is destroying the positive ideas of the being that has done positive and good things trying to live this life. We're devouring our own thought process because we've been trained to allow it to happen. And this is a weird thing to begin to kind of break that down. But the more you think about it, the more you begin to understand, yeah, every day that person came in and berated me, told me I was worthless, to shut up, that nothing I did mattered, that I would never amount to anything, that I was a whore, that I was a whatever, right? That I was easy, that I was ugly, that I had a whatever kind of insult. And the insults are endless and they're all painful. And when you hear it day in and day out, how do you unthink that? Well, first off, you got to become aware that the process is even happening. And this story is an outline of that process. Oh, then spake, though I gave to him who deserved not the gift, to the baser the battle's prize. Winter's 8th was thou under the earth, milking the cows as a maid. Aye, and babes didst thou bear. Unmanly thy soul must seem. So he just points it out. He says, listen, you're a bitch. All right. So then he starts talking to Odin. Well, you sat with a bunch of witches. You made magic. They sat with spells and samsy once, like witches with charms didst thou work, and in witches' guise amongst men didst thou go. Unmanly thy soul must seem. So now he's saying, well, you were walking around in drag. You were doing witches' spells. So the charming, the fixing of Baldur's horse, right? Remember that? That's what he's talking about here. But I've never seen a tale where he goes about with wearing women's clothes. So then Frigg jumps up to defend her old man. So as you see the pattern progress here, each god is defended by a goddess, defended by a goddess, defended by a god, defended by a goddess. Right? These masculine and feminine ideas are both taking a turn against this fire that's burning through our thought process, that's beginning to make us doubt who and what we are and what we're capable of. Right? Be silent, Frigg, thou art Fjorn's wife, ever lustful in love. For Villian Ve, thou wife of Vithrir, both on thy bosom have lain. Right? So he calls her a whore too. If a son like Balder were by me now here within Aeger's hall, from the sons of the gods thou shouldst go not forth, till thy fierceness and fight were tried. Loki spake, thou wilt then, Frigg, for that further I tell of the ill that now I know, mine is the blame that Balder is no more. Thou seest ride home to the hall. All right? So right there, he called her a whore and said, I killed your son. How would a woman ever contend with those kind of thoughts? How do we get something like that kind of pain in perspective? How is there anywhere out here where a woman might come and find some kind of hope for that kind of pain or healing or injury? It comes up in the Heimdallr. The Heimdallr says no, it's not that. Yeah. Maiden, wake thee, my friend, my sister Hindley in thy hollow cave. Already comes darkness, and ride must we to Valhalla to seek the sacred hall. So she calls Hindley out from under a rock. This is Freya, the very goddess of love, fertility, and abundance. And not only that, in the Svipdagsmal, what does she create? She creates the hill of healing, right? So the hill of healing, if I can find it, is a beautiful idea. And I'll read it to you, tell you exactly what it is. So Freya is that goddess that represents many modern women. The old man run off, left her with two girls. What does she do? She creates a heaven for half the fallen warriors. Right? But she also does something else. As Svipdag comes to argue with Fjolsvip in the Svipdag Mall, the Theosophist suggests that Svipdag is the modern reincarnation of Odin who went away. He went a Viking, who knows, but he's gone. Probably a very common occurrence. What call they the mountain on which the maid is lying so lovely to see? Lieferberg it is, and long shall it be a joy to the sick and sore. For well shall grow each woman who climbs it, though sick full long she has lain. That's the idea that helps overcome the negative thoughts. This whole idea of hope is encapsulated in the idea that, holy shit, there's this goddess has created something for me, right? If I was a woman and I began to see that, I don't know, I'm not a woman, that's hope. That's hope that this beautiful goddess of half the fallen slain, of love, abundance, of two daughters whose name mean treasure, who has survived the world and done all these things, has created a very special place for women who have lain long and sore, who go through this kind of thought process. This kind of struggle is the very real struggle that so many of these women today deal with. What are their thoughts at night? Who knows? So that's where we find hope. So the insults that he's thrown at Frigga, well, I'm sure there's lots of women that have been called a whore. Maybe some of them have lost their children. Where do they go to find hope? Where do they go to deal with the pain of it? How do they deal with those negative thoughts? Well, I believe it's called an act of faith. When we look at Freya and see that she is great of healing for those who have lain long of sore and sick. And indeed, she's the one that speaks up. Loki tells Frigga, I'm the one that killed your boy. It's Freya that speaks up right then. Mad art thou, Loki, thou known, thou makest the wrong and shame thou hast wrought. The fate of all does Frigg know well, though herself she says it not. So Frigg is omniscient. Odin sees all, she knows all. Be silent, Freya, for fully I know thee. Sinless thou art not thyself. Of gods and elves who are gathered here, each one as thy lover has lain. So when we humanize the interaction of the divine, that's the kind of stuff we're going to see. That's how our thought process is trained us to perceive it. The lowest, most negative way possible that allows us to continue acting in the way we wish to act without having to ever change ourselves. We're afraid of this, afraid of that. But in that thought process, do we not negate the very idea of hope that I just talked about? I'd submit to you that that is the essence of this thought process that's crippling the entirety of this feast, that's crippling our ability to go into the world and thrive, that to enjoy what we might call hope, what we might call the ability to overcome, right? Everybody says, well, the gods aren't interested in what you do. I beg to differ. I got a whole bunch of stories here that tell me at every level, yeah, they're on your side. They've given you the tools necessary to do it. Right? Freya spake, false is thy tongue. She called him a damn liar. And soon thou shalt find, if that it sings thee an evil song, the gods are wroth and the goddesses all, and in grief shalt thou homeward go. She's telling him, you're screwing up, buddy. And then Loki spake, be silent, Freya, thou foulest witch, and steeped full sore in sin, in thy arms of thy brother the bright gods caught thee, when Freya her wind set free. I don't know if she farted during the middle of the act or what, but that might be what that happened there. It's kind of intimidating. Got to think about that too. Now here's the thing, their daddy speaks up. Njorth spake, small ill does it work, though a woman may have a lord or a lover or both, but a wonder it is that this womanish god comes hither, though babes he has born. So here's this dude that's giving birth to all these babes, horse for one, holy cow. And now he's calling all these women whores. What? It's like the same thing at a bar when a girl won't talk to a guy and he's drunk and he says, oh, you fucking whore, right? Can't win for losing. So how do we sort through that thought process? Once again, we got to go through the rest of the law, and we got to find those spots where we are reassured that these gods are on our side, just like I just showed you. Right? That's how we contend with that thought. Logan spake, be silent, north, thou eastward sent to the gods as a hostage given, and the daughters of Hymir their privy had when use did they make of thy mouth. North spake, great was thy gain, though long was I gone, to the gods as a hostage given. The son did I have, whom no man hates, and the foremost of gods is found. So he's rubbing it in his face. Look, you ain't nothing. Yeah, I had to endure some things. I came out the other side of it much better, much stronger. Once again, he's going to take the most positive aspect of what someone has accomplished and turn it into a negative thought, turn it into a negative idea to eat away at the soul, right? So many times our perception of a situation may not be the same as somebody else's. And we can move along here as if we're doing something great and thinking that we're important and thinking that we're great. And then somebody comes along and says, well, you're just in it for the money for yourself. And polite form of character assassination, we oftentimes water cooler gossip, right? But that's the same principle here. The uninspired human intellect. Here's the bottom line for it. If you're not building your life, if I'm not building my future, who the fuck else is supposed to? That's my responsibility to adopt a path that's going to make me be stronger. Right? So we have to fortify ourselves to withstand the slings and arrows of those aligned against us. All right. Loki spake, give heed now, North, nor boast too high. No longer I hold it hid that with thy sister hadst thou so fair a son, thou hadst no worse a hope. Njord and Njord, right? Right. Njord is earth. Njord is the sea. And they gave birth to Freya and Freya. Now, if you go all through Central America, there is a white man with a long beard that was supposed to impart to them knowledge of how to do all the great things that you see down there. And their name usually translates into something resembling the foam of the sea, which is a very important thing to consider. And it gives a hint that this goes back much, much further than anyone realizes. Now, Tears had enough of it. Tears spoke. Of the heroes brave is Frey the best. So he's sticking up for Frey. Totally opposite ends of the spectrum. Tyr is not the god of justice. He is not known as a reconciler of men. It's very clear about that in the lore. And here's Frey, who has never made a woman cry, who is the Lord of Alfheim, who is the shining summer sun and the gentle summer rain and the husband of Gerder. Right? He gave away his sword. He gave away that powerful symbol, phallic symbol of victory, so he could be the wife. He laid aside the warrior to be the husband. All right? There's some very important deal there. But Tyr recognizes and respects that. There are roles in our society that each of us fill. Not everybody's going to be a Viking. Some people are going to be a farmer. Some people are going to be a craftsman. Some people are going to be merchants. Some people will be warriors. And some people will be Gothar. Right? Some people will have an understanding of the lore to share with others. Be silent, Tyr, for between two men, friendship thou never couldst fashion. Not known as a reconciler of men, saying right there, you've never had a friend. Fain would I tell thee how Fenrir once thy right hand rent from thee. Tyr spake, my hand do I lack, but Hrothgar near not. And the loss brings longing to both. Ill fares the wolf, who shall ever await in fetters the fall of the gods. So he tells him right there, your boy's going to die. He may have bit my hand off, but at the end of things, he's going to get it. Be silent, Tyr, for a son with me thy wife once chanced to win. Not a penny, methinks, wast thou paid for the wrong, nor wast righted an inch, poor wretch. Now, Tyr's wife is typically referred to as Zisa, right? And her symbol was the light Roman warship or the light warship that would be able to travel the riverways. And there are a couple of places for her to be found around Denmark, Zisa. And in the city hall of Augsburg today, the lady in red painted in the city hall is supposed to be Zisa. This is typically known as Tyr's wife. But you got to look hard to find it. The reason she's on the city hall is because on September 28th, they made great offering to her and they had a great victory over the Romans. Loki spake. Frey spake. Now Frey speaks up. He didn't stand up for himself. His father did it. Tyr did it. Now he's standing up for himself to speak up on behalf of Tyr, not for himself, but for Tyr. By the mouth of the river, the wolf remains, right? Till the gods' destructions go. Thou too shalt soon, if thy tongue is not sealed, be fetter thy forger of ill. So he's telling him, listen, you need to shut up, we're fixing to bound you. Bigvir spake, had I birth so famous as Ingvar of Frey, and set in so lofty a seat, I would crush to marrow this croaker of ill, and beat his body to bits. So Bigvir is one of Frey's two servants, right? Be silent, Bigvir. Never could set their shares for the meat of men. Head and straw on the floor they found thee not, when heroes were fain to fight. So he's making fun of him about an incident that happened when they were at Utgard Loki, I believe. Now Heimdall speaks up. Drunk art thou, Loki, and mad are thy deeds. Why, Loki, leavest thou this not? For drink beyond measure will lead all men, no thought of their tongues to take. So he's telling everybody right there. So Loki is the uninspired human intellect, the ego run amok. Heimdall is the warder of heaven. He guards the Bifrost. So there is a real, he's the whitest of the Asa. There's a real deal there. So when these two contend with each other at Ragnarok, Heimdall slays Loki, right? He kills the ego to protect heaven. There's something to pay attention to in that whole symbolism right there. So perhaps I should consider, if I'm going to move up in any given fashion, I need to be paying attention to how Heimdall strikes down Loki. The first thing he does is says, don't be a fucking drunk, right? That too much drink is always the issue. People get drunk, their egos get enormous. They're 6 foot tall and bulletproof. They can talk to any women, right? It's a real deal. Loki spake, be silent, Heimdall, and days long since was an evil fate for thee fixed. With back held stiff must thou ever stand as warder of heaven to watch. So in Loki's mind, this idea of protecting heaven is not a good thing. Heimdall, this is an honorable duty. This is a sacred charge, as it should be for us. Guarding the wellspring of the best thoughts we can come up with. If the very best thinking we can come up with put us in a situation we don't like, we've got to change our thought process and get into a situation we do. And we start by being grateful for where we are. Very few things can stand in the way of gratitude and love, right? These are the things that allow us to negate the bitterness being spit out by this out of control ego, right? And all of this is happening, imagine, as you're laying in bed at night, thinking about all these thoughts. You were doing good, and the next thing you know, shit, man, I'm not so cool as I thought I was. Look, now Skadi speaks in. She got a real issue with him to begin with. Lighter art thou, Loki, but longer thou mayst not in freedom flourish thy tail. On the rocks the gods bind thee with bowels torn forth from thy frost-cold sun. Loki spake, though on rocks the gods bind me with bowels torn forth from my frost-cold sun, I was first and last at the deadly fight where Thialfi was caught. Right? So now she's pissed. Wert thou first and last in the deadly fight, there where Thialfi was caught, and from my dwellings and fields shall ever come forth a counsel cold for thee. Right? Then Sif came forward and poured mead for Loki in a crystal cup and said, hail to thee, Loki, and take thou here the crystal cup of old mead. For me at least, alone of the gods, blameless thou knowest to be. He took the horn and drank thereafter. Alone thou wert, if truly thou wouldst all men so shyly shun. But one do I know full well, methinks, who had thee from Hlorrithi's arms, Loki the crafty in lies. So he talks about raping her, cutting her hair off. That's what that is. Right? Baelish spoke, the mountain is shake, and surely I think from his home comes Hlorrithi now. He will silence the man who is slandering here together both gods and men. Loki spake, be silent, Baela, thou art Bigvir's wife, and deep art thou steeped in sin. A greater shame to the gods came never befouled thou art with thy filth. Then came Thor forth and spake, Unmanly one cease, for the mighty hammer Mjolnir shall close thy mouth. The shoulder cliff shall I cleave from thy neck, and so shall thy life be lost. Lo, in has come the son of earth. Why threaten so loudly, Thor, thou less fierce thou shalt go to fight with the wolf? Then he swallows Sigfather up. Unmanly one cease, for the mighty hammer Mjolnir shall close thy mouth. I shall hurl thee up and out in the east, where men shall see thee no more. Thou hast fared to the eastward road, that men should say no more. In the thumb of a glove didst thou hide, thou great one, and there forgot thou wast Thor. Unmanly one cease, or the mighty hammer shall close thy mouth. Right? He continues to insult him. I have said to the gods and the sons of gods the things that whetted my thoughts, but before thee alone do I now go forth, and thou fightest well, I ween. Ale hast thou brewed, but eager now, such feast shalt thou make no more. Over all that house which is here within shall play the flickering flames, and thy back shall be burnt with fire. Right? After that, Loki hid himself in Frenang's waterfall in the guise of a salmon, where the gods took him. He was bound with the bowels of his son Vali, but his son Narfi was changed to a wolf. Skathi took a poisonous snake and fastened it up over Loki's face, and the poison dropped thereon. Sigyn, Loki's wife, was there and held a shell under the poison, but when the shell was full, she bore away the poison, and meanwhile the poison dropped on Loki. That's about what his wife should expect. It's like the guy's like, you need to get me another beer. Right? That's the narcissist. She's keeping the poison, protecting him, and every time she fails to do so, he's going to cuss her ass out. At the end here, when Thor comes in, this warder of men, this is also an act of faith. To overpower our own ego, to get the thoughts correct, to understand what we're thinking, to get things in perspective, it requires faith. And it requires the strength. This is Thurisaz. This is protection from the Thyrsus. This is the thorn that protects. This is Thor at his finest. Every god or goddess works together to work against this one negative thought. And everyone was brought down to the most human level. And if you look through what you see online, you'll see people humanize all of these things. And as they do so, they reduce what we might consider divine. And all of it is a corrosive against our faith. These are things to be considerate of as we walk through and try to build ourselves in this faith to become something more. Like I say, this book, all of that is in Eager's Feast, which I'm going to rewrite and put into the new book, Something More. And if you haven't read the last couple of books, I highly suggest you do. Beneath a Sacred Tree, right? Death and a New Day, and Truerbach. These are books that build an element of faith. So I got to get ready for the next meeting at 8 o'clock on Patreon. If you're a member, I hope you join in, and we'll begin the Zoom call here shortly, and we'll continue on with this discussion about getting our thoughts right. So I appreciate everybody's time tonight. I appreciate everybody joining in. I thank you very much. And tomorrow's Monday. Go out there, grab it by the nose, and whip its ass.